because in the last couple of hours, a new Disney fighting was announced. And this is one we are not too happy about. Tom, can you bring it up on screen? Marvel Entertainment Chairman Ike Perlmutter out at Disney. And you can tell from this picture right here why many in Hollywood will be cheering at this news, because Ike Perlmutter is a personal friend of and heavy sponsor of Orange Man Bad. So this news will be met with elation, I should imagine, in certain circles of Hollywood. For those that are not familiar with him, Ike Perlmutter is one of the earlier owners of Marvel. He has been with Marvel since before they were acquired by Disney. He used to be functionally the CEO of Marvel. And ever since the Marvel Studios days, he has acted as the checks and balances guy. He didn't really ask for any kind of political message to be put into the movie, but he may have kept quite a few out of them during Phase 1, Phase 2, and the part of Phase 3, which he oversaw. And he also wanted to limit their spending. There was quite a few stories about him that came out around the time when Kevin Feige and Victoria Alonso were able to outmaneuver him and oust him from the creative position. But now, after the fact, many of those stories may have been smears. We don't know the validity of them. What we do know is that as soon as he was gone, that's when Marvel started going off the rails. That's when we got Captain Marvel. That's when we got Phase 4. All of that happened or went into production right after he was removed from his position. So he was removed from all creative responsibilities, but he remained as the chairman of Marvel Entertainment, and he's one of Disney's biggest shareholders. He still remains one of Disney's biggest shareholders, but now he has lost the final remainder of his formal power over Marvel. Culture, you have gone through this story already. Is there anything else you can add to it?
I'm not sure how much else I can add to your brilliant description of what's going on with the events, other than this seems like a retaliation for him trying to lead a revolt in the board room. That would be my summation of events that I could add to this, but I don't know much else.
Yeah. Tom, your thoughts? Anything you want to add to Ike Perlmutter that I may have left out before we open it to the panel?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, we've been over his contributions and some of the controversy that surrounds this individual. As far as them letting him go, is really strange. Like I figure he's like what 106. So yeah. I mean, it's probably about time he should retire anyway. But I mean, has he really even been able to do anything? Because as we know, his power has pretty much been stripped for the past almost 10 years now. So 7 years or so better. Yeah. So since 2016, 15, anywhere, somewhere in there.
Yeah. The key part of this story is that because Perlmutter, he was the head of Marvel Entertainment, but not Marvel Studios, because the two of those were separated. So all the movies and entertainment, that's in Marvel Studios, and that is not affected by this. Whereas what happens now is what was left of Marvel Entertainment, which is basically merchandising, will be absorbed into other parts of Disney. Script Doctor, what does this tell you, and why do you think this happens?
I think probably because of his influence on the board, his friendship with the other stockholder, who his name is
Mr. Nelson Peltz.
Peltz, that's the name. I think this was just kind of a signal saying he may be a stockholder, but that's as far as it's going to go when it comes to the controlling interest of our company. He was really useful with regards to helping create Marvel Studios, because the profits of Marvel Entertainment rolled in to finance the creation of Marvel Studios. That's why he had so much influence and power at the beginning of it, and why when Disney took over, when they made the sale, they started slowly pushing him out, because he was still very much concerned about the health of the brand that he was managing. And unfortunately, yes, it was around Avengers Age of Ultron, I think, is when they started slowly nudging him away, and eventually it took effect. And since then, Marvel has not been succeeding very well. I think it's unfortunate. I was also really curious to know, to wonder who would be his successor, because I think he's 90 years old now. And if he were to have passed away prior, who would be taking over his controlling interest in Marvel Entertainment? What they would be doing would probably be of interest. But now that's not a factor anymore, because Disney has pulled all the final strings they need to completely divorce him from the very thing that he brought to the company. I think it's an unethical aspect, but I understand why they're doing it, because they don't want the challenge, they don't want the pushback. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Perlmutter here, he was basically the grand old man of Marvel before the Disney acquisition. Without Perlmutter, there would have been no Disney acquisition. Disney wouldn't have been valuable. This is the guy who made Marvel valuable again, together with Avi Arad. What do you think of discarding him like this?
Well, I mean, you would think you would want to keep this guy in control, because obviously he was a major portion of the success. I mean, I heard stories about him, demanding accountability as far as costs and resisting ever expanding budgets. And as we see from the Marvel Universe movies, the more they cost, the more the quality suffers. It's like the more money they have, the worse movies they make. And this guy was had his hands on the lever to make sure that didn't happen. And if you look, if his last involvement was Age of Ultron, well, it's downhill from there, creatively and eventually financially.
Paul, do you think that his friendship and support of Nelson Peltz might have had anything to do with his ousting? Any other thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, Perlmutter has a long history of wielding his power, whether it's arguing over tennis courts over his Palm Beach, a gated community, to potentially buying an unlicensed gun in New York. I mean, he's a very colorful guy. And I'm surprised none of that is coming out in any of this. Now, I think it was Mr. Dixon who mentioned, or someone said he's 90 years old, and this could just be the changing of the guard. I mean, he's done, 90 years old. Maybe this is him going.
He doesn't get to choose a successor, because he's completely out. His position's gone, right? I mean, there's no one being hired to take his place, so there's no hand on the lever now.
But Feige wanted him out.
Yeah.
And so Feige is the one who's taken over that role then.
Yeah. And you guys are far more inside on this stuff than I am, but this isn't the last challenge they're going to see from board members, right?
No, far from it. In fact, this doesn't do anything. I mean, on the contrary, I would imagine that Perlmutter, he still has all of his shares, and we know that he wasn't happy with being ousted from Marvel Studios the last time out. If there is any kind of hostility or anything like that this time, he's going to be even more bitter and more resentful. He's going to be an even bigger threat to Iger from a shareholder perspective than ever before, and he's going to be an even bigger ally to Nelson Peltz. So, what I think is that Iger is sending a signal here to Peltz with, look what I did with your guy, to which Peltz can respond, well, I still got that guy in my pocket and his shares.
Ike has a history of playing hardball in the hardest possible way.
Yes.
So I mean, again, if you're 90, there could be health issues. He could be way more irascible.
He's actually only 80.
Oh yeah,
Only 80.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
only
he's-
80? Okay.
Yeah, he's
Okay,
only 80.
sorry.
still
I mean-
at 80, you're like, who cares?
I'm
Going
not
for it.
no. 80
other
is the new 40. I mean, I
I
look
feel
like Burl
80.
Lives.
Right? Yeah, you look like Burl Ives today.
Yeah, you do look like
Hello,
Burl Ives.
kids. Pull up an ice block and I'll tell you what it was like to live in 1940.
I'm going to sing this song about a snowman.
There you go.
So he is a very colorful character, and I don't think Disney needs more of what he brings to the table right now.
Yeah.
I think he's just too much.
Yeah, they just Obi-Wan Kenobi'd him, to be honest with you.
Correct.
Yeah, I look, I think, and I could be wrong, but I'm under the impression, or for whatever reason, that Marvel Entertainment controlled all outside licensing revenues. So, like for example, the theme park IPs that are actually in control for Universal actually controls those rights. I mean, they don't control the rights; they basically are paying for the privilege to use that in their theme parks, and also on merchandise that they sell in their superheroes thing.
That also predates Disney as well. That
Exactly.
out.
Exactly. And I think what this does is it subtly moves all those revenues in under Feige to try to artificially prop up what's happening with the Marvel film.
Well, I see it as twofold. They're trying to bring it all under one roof, which makes sense financially,
right?
But at the same time, they're eliminating this role for Perlmutter, which was the very little semblance of power he had left, basically.
Yeah, then they're going to fold in everything there, just like they did with their television divisions. Because remember, they had 3 television divisions. Now they have 1. That's part of this whole, removing, the. Oh my gosh, the word keep falling out of my mouth today. Not enough coffee. But the redundancies. There's the word. Yeah, they're trying to remove redundancies. But like I said, I mean, this takes him out of not just this position, but it puts him in a more dangerous position. I agree with Paul. I think now you've created a very motivated adversary. And I think that he is probably going to reach out to all of his other friends who have significant financial resources, and they are going to march on the board, because when we get to the annual shareholders meeting, which is April 3rd, you're going to hear some displeasure.
It's going to be a fun Monday.
Well, I mean, if the history of Disney teaches us anything, it's that whenever they bring anything under their direct control, it immediately becomes unprofitable. Because seriously, because they always think they have all the answers and they never learn from any mistakes. So if they're going to be involved in Marvel merchandising and everything else, look for that to be a lost leader in 6 months.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the worst caveat of Hollywood is that you can't admit mistakes, therefore you can't learn from them. Because if you admit a mistake, you're going to be fired or not trusted again.
Well, mistakes were made, but nobody made them.
Exactly. That's the talk around that I've heard a few times. Mistakes were made. Who made them? Don't know.
Don't know. We'll look into that.
We'll get back to you. Top men are looking into it. What type of men? Top men.
I'm staying away from mirrors right now.
Yeah, well, no need. You have one right here on the panels.
What I love about this article in the New York Times, one that Six just sent me here, is how they're going as hardcore as they can out of their way to try to paint Ike as a bad person, no matter what, without giving him any credit whatsoever for practically single-handedly saving Marvel from itself back in the 80s.
Yeah. And you can tell this also right here in the Hollywood Reporter. Granted, there are not that many pictures of Ike Perlmutter to choose from, but still, you have to look long and hard to find a picture of him with his BFF, the Orange Man badge. But still, that is obviously what the Hollywood Reporter put out there deliberately, because they know that 90% of their readership base in Hollywood suffers from a really bad case of derangement syndrome. So this is their way of saying, this is good news, we got him. So truth in journalism right here.
This to me almost feels like a tit for tat, like it's trying to distract the wokey wokes from Victoria being fired. Like it's almost
That's
like
an interesting thesis or an interesting hypothesis.
I think there might be something to that. Because last week they fired someone who is known for the wokeness. And of course, Iger, he can't afford to be seen as a JPEG. That was what they expected JPEG to do. But to strike at the heart of wokeness at Disney, that would come from Bob Iger, no, he needs to restore his image if he ever hopes to be like an ambassador to
so
China.
he basically
or something like
shot
this
the old
again.
toothless dog who can't bite you anymore.
Because we're on
think
the other
there might be
political
something
side
to
of the
that.
spectrum. Yeah.
Except again, I think this plays on many levels. I just think it was, I understand maybe that being part of the motivation, but I think it plays on a lot of different levels. And I think Iger thinks this is a positive strategic move because it's going to eliminate a lot of internal stuff that maybe Peltz and others had access to because they just removed another, pal from this group of people trying to get the board to be, restructured at Disney. I think that does take away some of the inside information that they get, but at the same time, this guy's now gunning for you, and as Paul said, he's a very aggressive dog when it comes to business. So maybe he may be toothless, but he's got other ways to hurt you. So we'll see.
It's all fun. This was fun.
Yeah,
this is just something to talk about.
Game of Thrones Business Edition is
yes,
what this is. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on it there. That this is him sending a signal. This is kind of like the DJs back on radio back in the 90s. If they played like a song from like an East Coast rapper, they had to play one from the West Coast instantly afterwards, show that they didn't have any sides. They were just doing their jobs. This is kind of like that. That here now he has gone first, took out one on the extreme regressive side of the scale. So now he needs to go over with one of the more conservative side of the scale. It's like the only one that they actually have in Disney. I mean, that's the biggest reason I can think of, because on the job performance, Perlmutter hadn't done anything wrong. I mean, Marvel stuff is like licensed everywhere. Marvel pulls in billions in licensing revenue, and that's because of what Perlmutter has done and continues to do, or at least in a very big part because of that. Paul, any final words on this before we move on?
Well, I my thought is that they've been possibly wanting to get rid of him for a long time. I mean, he is more than a chum of Trump. He was in deep in the Mar-a-Lago Troika. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like this is when I mockingly said his BFF Trump. I was only halfway joking. These guys are tight.
No, they're extremely tight, and so that's the last person anyone in Hollywood would want to be associated with. So I'm not surprised. I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier, except he did have a massive influence on the licensing side and keeping the money going into Marvel at the very, very beginning. So again, I don't know what happened in between, but I can guarantee you they've been wanting to get rid of him for an awful long time. That's I'm thinking that I'm just he just doesn't fit.
No, not anymore.
Unless he turns trans just to stay on the board, just suddenly comes out as trans.
Well,
I could be the oldest trans person in history. That could happen.
Yeah, well, I don't think. I think that he is simply saying I identify as a Z-Zim or something like that. might suffice. But yeah.
I just think that he bought an unlicensed handgun.
Would be very Yiddish. So, pardon me, what?
I just dig that he bought an unlicensed handgun in New York City.
Oh yeah, no, he's a character.
He's a badass in my opinion.
He's a badass. That was back in 2018.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. But I mean, he has had these kinds of adventures. But again, he is part of a class of people who, again, it's another group of people who feel they're untouchable because of their wealth. I'm not going to celebrate, that class of individual, anyway. I mean, good for the good work that he did for Marvel, but on the other hand, there's reprehensible aspects of his personality that I'm not going to celebrate.
Reprehensible is your words, but
that's my word.
Yeah,
that's sorry.
Yeah,
that's me.
Indeed.
And I didn't say he was. I said aspects to his personality. So there was no personal accusation.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right. Nicely hedged there.
Thank you. Well, I am Burl Ives.
Yeah.
You got to bring it down here a little bit more.
It wasn't. Yeah, he was not the Australian guy. Who's
you
the
ever
Australian?
hear about Ike Perlmutter, the man who single-handedly saved X-Men? Well, pull up an ice block and I'll tell you. That's what you got to do. Yeah.
That's right.
There's always X-Men. Anyway.
Especially now when Victoria Alonso isn't there to make them the mutants.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying it has everything to do with Vicky, but like, I think that's part of it. This was like, okay, we'll give you one. But like I said, it's the old toothless dog in the corner who can't even bite anybody anymore. Right? Like they're trying to make a big deal out of somebody who has been pretty much defanged years ago. But whatever, I guess, let him have it. He's 90. He should retire anyhow. Good for him, I guess. I mean, I don't know how else to look at it at this point. It's not like he had any power really anymore anyway.
I'm sure at meetings,
Sorry,
he was
John.
the guy saying this is stupid when everybody else agreed it was brilliant. And they
absolutely
wasn't in the room anymore.
That's pretty much it, Chuck. That's kind of the way it went down, no matter which version you read into, I guess.
Right.
Because in Bob Iger's book, his version there was that Bob Iger keyed in on the Captain Marvel character and went to Feige about it, and he's like, "That's great, we'd love to do it, but Ike won't let it happen." And then he added that also Ike was against Black Panther happening, which I guess is also kind of a bit of bullshit. But anyway, the whole thing then came to a head, and they squeezed him out so they could do what they wanted to do. Under the idea that he wouldn't allow it otherwise. So
these people with this kind of power have they talk to each other in a certain way that it's really difficult to fathom unless you've actually been in the middle of a bunch of 1%ers talking to each other who all feel that they're smarter than anybody else on the planet and can tell poor people what to do. I've been there. It's very surreal. It is very, very surreal. These people are kingmakers and they're used to yachts and stuff that it's difficult for anybody to comprehend unless they've actually experienced it. No tag day for Ike. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. And with that, we have a couple of super chats. We have some on different topics, but we are going to do all of the Disney-themed super chats first. And then we are going to move into other topics here. So on the topic of this.